Now, I know what you're thinking, Dane. You're saying it's pretty awful to wake up from a dead sleep to a screaming, squawking baby at like 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Well,
it's not ideal. I can attest to that.
I can guarantee you I woke up more, how would I say this? Chaotically.
More worser.
The worstest thing that's ever happened. So I rolled over the other night and I just kind of gave myself a little, and then all of a sudden, from the bowels of hell, my calf decided that it was going to cramp. So I was like, no, I'm going to outsmart you, mother. And so I grabbed it and pulled it back, but I think I pulled it back in the wrong direction and only set in the cramp more. So you just go, ha, 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 and you just, Satan, take me now. Let go. I'll do your bidding. Just let go of my calf. Anyway.
You know how I'm looking at you right now?
Yeah.
Like James Franco in that First Time meme with the noose. First time?
Not my first time.
Yeah, I am familiar with the abrupt calf cramp that pulls you out of a dead sleep.
You could be squatting 400 pounds and it still won't be that activated. I can't even like flex my bicep as hard as that thing locks down.
Not ideal.
Oh, and then it's sore for the rest of the, what the hell is that? Like you work out and it's sore for the rest of the day. Like that thing just, whenever I stepped wrong, it's like, hey, you want a fresh one? I was like, no, I don't want a fresh one. Calm your shit. Drink some liquid IV and get hydrated, you know? Stay hydrated is what I'm trying to say.
Health Corner here on WMD Podcast. I read an article the other day about, like people who like do that nervous where they bounce their leg or whatever.
Yeah.
The calf muscle is actually highly efficient at burning energy. Mm-hmm. And if you like do that for like an extended period of time, you can burn.
You're not going to lose 30 pounds, but like you'll burn an extra.
Right. You're not going to go from Gorlock to the Destroyer to like having a 6-pack in a week if you like bounce your calf. But based on the size of the muscle and all that kind of stuff, like, you can burn a lot of serious calories like that sitting on your chair.
Thank you, Andrew Huberman.
There you go.
So anyway,
sometimes you know stuff. Is that where I saw that? Was that him?
Huberman
on Rogan?
He's like, if you're just a more active guy, like if you sit in that,
right. That's where I didn't know where I saw it. But
Andy Hubes.
I wasn't trying to steal his thunder.
Yeah, you didn't say you conducted the study yourself.
But I did.
Wearing a lab coat and a rectal thermometer in your pocket.
As a matter of fact, I think all thermometers are rectal thermometers. It really just depends
if you're brave enough.
Exactly.
All right.
We're off to a rip-roaring start on 146.
Well, I want to make a slight caveat. We are aware that this week there was an FBI whistleblower, but we don't have enough information.
And we're not talking about the circled whistleblowing that they do with themselves at FBI headquarters.
That's not all they're blowing over there. Hi-oh. But yeah, so it just came out.
More innuendo.
Innuendo. A couple of days ago. We don't have all the scoop yet, so we're going to let it suss out a little bit before we go into those topics. But speaking of topics, Dane, you want to go into what we're
go into ours?
Yeah, let's get to it.
That's that.
Let's not dilly nor dally.
Yeah.
The meme destruction. Bernie is once again asking for your donation to his wealth, but fuck capitalism. He won't hear it. And he won't sit for it either.
It's terrible. He gets to do it, but not you.
All right. Culture Corner. Woke capitalism. Something's going on here. Because all these brands can't just be deciding to commit suicide like fucking Jonestown over here. So there has to be something a little bit deeper going on.
Yeah. Miller Lite and Ford have decided to join Bud Light and Gillette in the essentially Darwin Awards for how to tank your company faster. And we're going to talk about that.
Literally drinking the Kool-Aid all at the same time.
Yeah.
So anyway, Epstein.
Shit-flavored Kool-Aid, too. It's not even like the good red
It's not even Kool-Aid. It's like Cool Fizz. It's like...
There's no aid going on.
It's like, this is close, but it's gross. Anyway, Epstein didn't kill himself. The feds and Dems are both attacking whistleblowers, but I thought they were just standing up for and protecting democracy.
I thought whistleblowers were like a super important thing that we needed to maintain our democracy and make sure it doesn't run amok.
Julian Assange.
Right. And Snowden. And other people.
People that were found with... extension cords around their necks and apparent suicide. Anywho, more on that later. And then the main topic, Altman gives Skynet to the government. Have you even watched The Terminator? For Christ's sake. Like that's literally how it starts. They might actually, Cameron might have grounds to sue these motherfuckers for how much he's ripping off his story.
Or maybe he ripped it off from them because they time traveled back and gave him the idea for the Terminator back in the day. You ever think about that?
Time traveling does exist in the Terminator too.
Yeah. See, we watched the shows. Why didn't you, Altman?
See, we're thinking.
We're on this levels here.
Right when you think we're inside the box, we're outside the box.
We're on octagon chess level.
So with all that being said, Dane, you want to drop into this 30-minute episode?
Let's do it. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 146, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/146. You can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video of the podcast on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. Look for episode 146. I think this one can stay up in its totality on YouTube. Then also link up with us on our other socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, private members only Facebook page at $5 a month of support. Just go over to wmdpodcast.com, support our work tab to figure out how to get in there. And you can also link up with us on Tribel and Float. So, David, on to 146. The Burnster.
The Burninator.
The
Do you feel the burn?
The Burnster is a walking meme that we're discussing in today's meme segment. And we have an article on Bernie had a good year last year, had a pretty solid year financially. Politically, he's still just a complete train wreck, but financially, doing pretty good. This from Business Insider, the article title is, quote, Bernie Sanders doubled his income last year by writing a best-selling book that condemns capitalism. And the title of the book says, It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism by one Bernard Sanders.
Which he gave away for free, right?
Absolutely. And I think by doubling his income, those were all just donations that his super wealthy, living in a commune out in the middle of the forest,
definitely
Democratic
doesn't own,
Socialist
definitely doesn't own 3 houses. Definitely doesn't own 3 houses.
No, he does not, because he is a man of principle and his words actually mean something.
By gum?
Yes, Bernie. So, I guess David and I could go on and on about the hypocrisy here and how Bernie is, just like the rest of our overlords. It's
Dane,
good for me, but not for thee kind of thing.
3 houses? How can you fit all of your shit into one house?
I would like 3 houses. I'm also not going to bitch about the framework of society that allows me to acquire said houses, but I guess that's just a minor difference in principle between Bernie and I.
Principles.
Yeah.
What a concept.
What a concept. So that's like I said, David and I could pontificate on that just for 30 minutes. But
I wonder what gems were in that Fuck Capitalism book, by the way.
Probably nothing good.
I'm going to go ahead and assume that it wasn't like, hey, you know what? We can make this work still.
Because it's not even like Bernie is some like super insightful, brilliant, academic like communists or whatever. Like they have academics on their side. I know it's kind of hard to believe still in 2023. They do have academics who will at least try to fudge the numbers enough to justify their ideology. But like Bernie's not that kind of guy. He's just regurgitate the same tired bromides over and over again. Tax the rich, the 1% and the 99. And
if we put a 1 penny tax on every transaction on New York Wall Street journalism,
like
we'd have 27.2 trillion gigabytes. And if you hit 88 miles per hour, we go back to the future.
I don't know how many pages this book was. But how many pages do you think he spent bitching about there being too many different brands of deodorant?
That's the thing?
You familiar with this?
I'm not.
A couple years ago, like he had this.
I only wear men's sport.
He had this,
everything else is garbage.
He had this now, and again, this is to my point of his lack of insightfulness. This is a now infamous quote of Bernie, which I'm going to butcher the quote, but he was basically saying like, this is why capitalism is a problem, because capitalism produces things like too many different types of deodorant. Like how many types do you really need? But it doesn't fix the big stuff like poverty and things like that. So like Bernie's really upset that we have too many different brands and scents of deodorant is a big problem. I
have an idea, Bernie. Why doesn't the government just assume all deodorant manufacturing? Make it USDA scent disregarding 0.20, smell fresh.
You know, you make that
or
joke.
Or you can smell clean. You get two choices. You can smell fresh or you can smell clean.
You make that joke, but that would actually be exactly what Bernie would want, because what does government control of any good or resource do? It creates shortages. And that seems to be what he wants.
He wants a bunch of stinky motherfuckers out there, I'll tell you that. Because we don't have enough deodorant for this semester. So all of the people that were born on an odd day do not get deodorant.
Which makes perfect sense for his, like, you know, tree-hugging commune background self.
Totally. I'll just start dreading my hair out and wearing fucking Birkenstocks.
Yeah. So anyway, shocker, I know. Bernie hates capitalism, but got rich off capitalism. So that's the meme.
Make it make sense. Anyway.
With that being said, we're on to the culture corner.
Now this
one is going to be a doozy. This actually might be longer than any other segment.
No,
it's justified. We promise.
All of our cunning,
which we have diminishing supply of. In Culture Corner, we are talking about this rather odd propensity for mega corporations these days to basically read all of the books in like business and marketing 101 and do the exact opposite and then light it on fire. And in their effort to basically tell Bud Light to hold their beer, Miller Lite is now joining the ranks of the marketing geniuses of Bud Light and Gillette and the other, you know, brands that went woke in trying to get completely useless social justice points while completely smacking their core demographic right across the face.
If I may, I found the Bud Light campaign to be even less infuriating than the Miller Lite. Miller Lite took a page out of the...
Because it's the preachiness.
Well,
the real problem.
They took the Gillette approach, where it's not like, we're going to tell you that we're not just going to tell you that we're going to do things differently. We're going to tell you that we're going to do things differently and insult the people that made this brand what it is today.
Well, and then the reason why we were kind of implicitly admitting that we were doing it wrong in the past is really your fault, consumer. Yeah, like, it really is just taking that the consumer's always right and doing the exact opposite.
One of the lines was, and women were integral to making beer for years, and how did they repay us? By putting us in bathing suits. I'm sorry. Who held a gun to fucking Cindy Crawford's head? Who held a gun to that Ireland chick's head? Who is
Kathy Ireland?
Oh, what a fucking smoke show. Sorry.
What a fox. We're not supposed to say that.
Oh, I'm sorry. What a very intelligent young woman that probably has a lot of discerning perspectives on how the life is.
I'm sure the contract she signed in order to have those images produced came with, you know, a fair amount of money and celebrity and all kinds of other things.
And she probably didn't mind doing that.
Definitely didn't detract from her material benefit. But, you know, I guess we're not supposed to focus on that. And, you know, we jumped the shark a little bit. We're going to describe the commercial to you, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes page so you can watch the roughly minute and a half of brain melting.
Degradation of men?
Yeah, of brain melting nonsense that it is. We're going to talk about it here in a second. But it really is, the minds of these people is just, it blows minds. It blows my mind, because on the one hand, they'll say, a woman choosing to have pictures taken of her in a bikini for money and fame and whatever else she gets out of that contractual arrangement is an example of terrible misogyny. But yet in the same token, like, sex work is empowering. And So women can choose to sell their bodies in the most intimate way, right? We're not going to cast moral aspersions on them, but they can choose to do that for money, and that is female empowerment. But if they get pictures taken in a bikini to promote a product, that's terrible misogyny that needs to be wiped out from the face of the planet. I don't understand how these people's brains work. I'm not going to try to pretend to. It'll probably like lead me onto some bad trip that I'll never come back from.
Until
I'll go crazy myself. But I don't get it. I don't get how these people
find out about OnlyFans.
That's what I'm saying.
Wait until they find out about OnlyFans.
Whether it be OnlyFans,
with no gun being held to her head whatsoever, other than just the promise of monetary value being given to her, whatever she does on that site, she chooses it willingly herself to put herself out there to receive money in return. Now, I don't know how they're going to use their mental jujitsu to blame men for that. They'll probably blame the man for giving her the money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if the man didn't give her the money, she wouldn't have done it in the first place, but she wanted to do it in the first place because she wasn't going to make money otherwise.
It's the same it's the same thing, right? So it's the same thing in terms of like sweatshops, right? In the third world, is that these Western liberals will say, look how terrible these sweatshops are. This is so terrible. This is a really bad thing. We should have all of those things shut down. And yes, ideally, in a perfect utopic world, sweatshops would not need to be a thing. Maybe AI is going to come along and produce everything for free, and we're all going to get everything we want, and nobody is going to have to work for substandard wages, according to Western liberals. However, that not being the world that we currently live in, they never stop to think for 5 seconds. Well, if somebody's working in a sweatshop, did they not look at all of their potential options for how they could put food on their table and a roof over their head and decide that of all of the bad options, this is the least bad? Because you'll find out that in many cases where their sweatshop campaigns were successful and these factories were closed in some of these third world countries, guess what a lot of those like young, vulnerable women and children, guess what they went back to a life of when they had no factories to work in?
The oldest profession known to man.
Criminality, basically shorter lifespans and a lot tougher life than they had even with the sweatshop. So again, that's not to extol the virtues of sweatshops. That is to check your own hubris and arrogance for 5 seconds, Western liberal, and think, well, maybe these people in these third world countries have just as much intelligence and personal autonomy as I do. And maybe they don't have as good of options as I do, and they just chose the least bad option available to them. Same situation. Maybe Kathy Ireland would have been a rocket scientist if she wasn't beautiful in a bikini. But that's not what she chose. She chose to have some pictures taken and to get some money for it in exchange for selling a product. Oh my God. Let's wipe that from the face of the earth, because that's the worst thing Kathy Ireland could have ever done with her life. But she chose it. Respect her autonomy, right? Her body, her choice. But, I understand you have to, preach from your soapbox because you aren't Kathy Ireland and you would never have gotten that job. And that's really what this is about. It's jealousy. It's envy. So.
Yeah. It's not like Kathy Ireland grew up thinking, man, I'm pretty enough to be a model. I'm pretty enough to be a model. And it's not like millions upon millions of little girls grow up with that idea that they want to be the pretty one. They want to go get paid to be pretty. Just be themselves, and they get paid because they're so attractive. Yeah, and then young little boys don't grow up going, I'm going to be a professional athlete. I'm going to get paid to be really good at using my body. Oh my goodness. So why don't we come out and strike against the NFL? Why don't we come out and strike against, the British Premier League? Because we have 2 cents rattling around in our fucking heads and hey, we weren't good enough. I can suck that up, Buttercup. All right, let's move on.
Because we would look like envious losers.
Yeah.
Because we weren't good enough to make it, so nobody else gets to do it. Yeah, that's exactly what you look like with ads like this. So anyway, we jumped an entire school of sharks to get there. I don't do sharks school? I think they're lone predators, right?
Yes.
I know they're fish, so fish,
some shark.
school,
I think. Well, I know hammerheads. They travel in schools. I don't know. I think they're solitary when they get to the place that they're going to. But
anyway, sometimes my brain works faster than my mouth.
Or your mouth works faster than your brain.
What we are discussing is a Miller Lite commercial. Like I said, click the link below if you want to watch it for yourself, where this woman is talking about how terrible it is because don't you know, the first brewers of beer all the way back to Mesopotamia, right, the cradle of civilization, were actually women. And that isn't it terrible that in the last 20 or 30 years, how did we repay these founding mothers of beer? We put them in bikinis and use them to sell beer.
We did. Men, just all men.
Right, exactly. And so what Miller Lite is going to do, in their infinite wisdom, is Miller Lite is starting a campaign where they're scouring the internet, and if you have any at home, feel free to donate it to Miller Lite and help them with this noble cause. They're scouring the internet to buy all marketing paraphernalia that had to do with using women to promote beer. So if you had one of those like life-size, remember that Family Guy of the Kathy Allen cardboard
that's
cutout?
why I brought it up. Yeah.
So if you have a life-size cardboard cutout, Miller Lite will buy it from you or
slightly
somehow
used
get it.
For some reason.
And they will break it down, compost it, use that compost to donate to farmers to grow hops, one of the constituent parts of beer. And those hops will be donated to women brewers. Now, they don't say microbreweries, but that's right. That's the implication because
10 of them.
I don't know that like Bud Light says like, hey, or Miller Lite says, hey, we are a women brewing company. So Miller Lite is using Miller Lite capital to buy or acquire things, using more of their own capital to process it, to make it useful as a fertilizer. And then they are donating that to their competitors.
That is such a long way to go.
Microbrewers, all in exchange for what? Social justice points with people that don't drink your beer anyway, while you're slapping your core constituency across the face.
Dane.
That's brilliance. On an epic report.
Do you think that they're aware that nowadays you can just Google that image and then print it out again?
You would think. You would think.
Like, you're not destroying it. You're not burning a book here. You're not destroying it's infant. You're not doing anything other than just frivolous bullshit, which is basically what this commercial and this ad campaign is. It's frivolous bullshit. So, and then you mentioned the Ford thing.
Ford has 2 trucks in a commercial. They're covered in mud, and then they run through water at the end, and like one of the Ford trucks is painted with the pride flag. That is far less annoying. It's far less annoying than the Miller Lite because it's not preachy, right? You can paint your truck anything you want. My only critique about the Ford thing is, why do people buy the trucks? It's not for the paint color. Yes, whether you choose Ford A or Ford B might be whether you like the red or the black one or the pride-colored one. But you're buying a Ford because it has better performance metrics than a GMC, a Toyota, or whatever.
Like it used to be like, it tows this much weight.
Yeah.
It makes you this much of a man.
So, I don't know. I didn't go to Wharton School of Business, but I know enough about marketing and branding to think like whatever the thing is that you're competing on, in this case, trucks and performance, maybe you want to talk a little bit about in your commercial about how your truck is better than all of the other trucks. I don't know. But, it's less annoying. It's still the same thing.
Well, it's the same thing as
your core constituency is not driving around trucks.
As all of their other arguments. It's all about literally, they didn't say that the pink, whatever the fuck it is, the unicorn Raptor, they didn't say that it had, like you said, any different metrics, anything different. You don't get in and it's automated and it goes, hi, silly, where do you want to go today? Oh, you look so fetch in your new little catch. There's none of that. It's just the same truck. And so basically what they've done, like you said, is just paint the outside of it, which goes back to the analogy we always use, is like they're very caught up in the wrapping paper. They could give a fuck if there's a president inside. There's no substance to any of these arguments. Like what? Okay, so Miller, you just want to insult 90%. Again, I think Bud Light was 90% of the beer that was bought by men.
Yeah.
Or their consumers. It's probably, I'd have to imagine it's right around there for Miller Lite too. So your grand idea is to insult and degradize the people that support your company for kudos in the public eye. But then again, there has to be something more to this. And that's what we've been beating around the bush on.
Right. And the capitalism is evil crowd, right? The Bernie Sanders of the world will tell you part of the reason why corporations are terrible is because all they care about is profit. Well, that seems to not be the case. They're at least not the motivating factor with these companies that are doing this kind of stuff. Wait. So what is motivating them? What is?
Profit.
No, that's what Bernie says. But just like Bernie's words don't match his own actions, his rhetoric also doesn't match reality.
They want to sell less products because they're trying to give back to the community by making less money.
Yes. Woke capitalism.
Woke capitalism.
No, it's actually a lot more banal and really just like, I don't know, I guess underhanded and seedy than that. What these corporations are doing is they're competing on an index, the CEI index, which stands for Corporate Equality Index, which you might be familiar with a similar concept, ESG, we've talked about on the podcast before, which is environmental, social, and governance. This is the one that's kind of like focused at climate change. And if you put policies into place that are going to actively combat climate change, whatever the WEF decides that is, one day to the next, then you get credits. You get your ESG score goes up. In a very similar way with these social justice issues, your corporate equality index, your CEI ranking goes up when you do things like this. So forget the fact that it attacks your bottom line directly, as Bud Light is learning, and maybe Miller Lite will in the very near future. These scores matter in a very real sense, because you have mega funds like favorites of the show, Blackrock and Vanguard, who control massive swaths of the global economy. And they will withhold investor funds based on your scores in CEI or ESG or whatever the case may be. And so there is a very real threat, financial threat on these companies to make sure they fall in line with their messaging and do and say the right things and march to the tune of whatever the overlords at the WEF and stuff want them to do in exchange for getting these investor funds. And that, by another name, is just extortion on a grand scale. It is, I mean, it really is corporate fascism is what it is. And, but, that would never happen coming from the left because the left are anti-fascists, we're told.
Well, my big question there is, so what's their motive? If their motive is...
You're talking about the Blackrock, the Vanguards, right, whoever is behind the CEI?
Is contradictory to what the motive of the company that they're telling to do this to, otherwise they'll withhold their funds. What's the motive for BlackRock and all the higher upper echelon people that are withholding those funds? What are they really trying to do?
Yeah,
that begs the question. So this is a little more sinister than just a shitty commercial for a crappy beer.
It absolutely is. And don't get me wrong, as powerful as the BlackRocks and the Vanguards are, they are just like the lapdogs for the world elites that are trying to rule this show. And again, we're going to point back to the World Economic Forum.
Not to sound too conspiracy theorist.
In terms of where the CEI comes from, it is an index that's generated by a foundation called the HRC Foundation, which I found kind of funny. I don't know what the HRC stand for, but that is exactly Hillary Rodham Clinton's initials, which I thought was funny, but that's neither here nor there, I guess. And who is behind the HRC Foundation? It's heavily funded, if not exclusively funded, by one George Soros, who, again, WEF darling, always wanting to make sure that his ideology is pushed in through state policy, et cetera, et cetera. And so in terms of like, what are they after? If the WEF is after nothing at all, it is after the complete dissolution of state sovereignty. Now, and that's not in the same way that, an ANCAP like myself would be like, in the states are morally illegitimate and all that kind of stuff. They want to end state sovereignty in the sense that within a domestic sphere, within the geographical control of an individual state, so the United States versus, say, France, right? The United States government is supreme. So whatever its legislature and executive and, the courts uphold, that's what happens within the geographical area controlled by that government versus France or in all of the other countries around the world. The WEF, in their pursuit of a one world government, which they are obviously the one world government of, this state sovereignty concept is very bad for them because they want to make sure that the rules that they write apply to all 7 billion of us, or however many there are now. And so that's what they're really after. So what they're trying to do is prove to you, the average citizen, that regardless of the president you elect or who your representative or senator is or what your courts say, we have the ability to completely impact all the way down to the granular level of what your products push and promote in terms of an agenda. We can tell mega corporations who you thought were these big, powerful entities that are writing their own rules and skirting all of the other rules that are supposed to apply to them. We can tell even them what to do. That's how powerful we are. And that's the point that they're trying to prove. They're dissolving state sovereignty.
Well, they're dissolving state sovereignty by
showing that they can control even mega multinational corporations.
Well, not just that, too. Is they're controlling the narrative. They're controlling with how you see reality.
Right.
Or the narrative that you see reality through.
Yeah, and it's the classic divide and conquer. That's always part of it.
It's a good thing that this is the only realm that they're doing it in, too, Dane. It's not like the whistleblowers ever get found out or, attacked.
Yeah.
Don't see the next segment of this Weapons of Immune Destruction podcast episode.
So, moving on with that segue to the Epstein segment, we are talking about the FBI whistleblowers, now former FBI agents, that testified in front of Congress this week talking about the FBI's involvement with January 6th. And you won't be surprised that the dividing lines of politicians both lauding these whistleblowers for being whistleblowers and the ones lambasting them, saying they're not really whistleblowers, they're just disgruntled employees and they're terrible people, really fell right down party lines. Democrats, apparently, in all of their fervor for protecting democracy, do not want to hear anything from any whistleblower that challenges whatever their preconceived definition of democracy is, which is we win, and if we ever lose, then you cheated. That's their definition of democracy.
Well, it seems to be, it goes both ways too. But again, when you say everything is a threat to your democracy, everything that happens nowadays is, it could decide the fate of our country as we know it. And then somebody comes out and says, hey, this is really detrimental to the trust of the American people in this country, and this is actually hurting people. And then instead of them grabbing that information and going, where did you find this? We need to find more of it. Then instead of doing that, they attack the person, like Dane said, their character, their ways of obtaining said information, whether or not they're in colleague with Russia, China, who knows? They immediately start defaming the person that's trying to spread the word to help the majority of the people, the masses in this country. So that seems pretty anti-freedom, pretty anti-democratic process, pretty anti, everything that they say that they're standing moral. It seems pretty immoral to me.
Yeah.
When that's their whole pulpit, is that they have the moral high ground. They seem to act pretty immorally when ever any of their positions are ever challenged. It's just weird to me. Does it seem the same way to you?
Oh, absolutely. And so the article that prompted this being the Epstein segment for 146 is an article written by two gentlemen, Alex Gutentag and Michael Schellenberger, over on Substack. And the title of the article is Why the FBI and Democrats Are Attacking Whistleblowers. And then the subtitle is FBI Says It Won't Release January 6th Surveillance Video Because It Would Show Too Many Undercover Government Agents and Informants. Now, you can read for free a good, I'd say probably half, maybe a little more than half of this article. But it is a paid article, so at some point you're going to get the paywall and stuff like that. And we're going to summarize, kind of the key points anyway for you. But even if you don't read the article, just that subtitle alone, think about how damning of an admission that is. We don't want you to see the footage of January 6th because it could potentially compromise are undercover agents. Now, when we were talking about Ray Epps shortly after January 6th on this here podcast, and when we've been talking, theorizing, conspiracy theorizing, that maybe there was a vested interest in some segments of the government that were very anti-Trump and wanted to make him look as bad as possible, there might be an incentive there.
Or turn you against your fellow man by making them look as bad as possible, being deplorables that violated everything that they're homegrown terrorists, so to speak.
In order to manufacture those narratives, right, there was probably an incentive for some segments of the government, the FBI in particular, to stage the January 6th protests, or at least inflame the non-FBI people that were there to do more than maybe they otherwise would have done on their own.
Hypothetically.
Whereas we are told this was just an organic insurrection by terrible Trumpers that were upset with the election that totally wasn't rigged. And they did this all on their own volition. But it's a rather important admission if there were 1, 10, 100, 200 potential FBI undercover informants that were agitating the crowd and pushing to go into the Capitol to do the bad stuff that the Democrats have been railing about ever since. And when you keep in mind the fact that the Capitol Police have said since day one, we got orders to remove the barricades. We were told to let them go in. Why? If this was just an organic thing of criminal activity that the Capitol Police would have been well within their rights to stop criminal activity, why was it allowed to persist? It's not as simple as, because it could have got dangerous. No, it was because FBI informants were involved in this, and the FBI told them, let them in. Let it go as far as it can so we can make this look as bad as it can so we can manufacture the narrative that these people are terrible and basically an entire half of the country are basically domestic terrorists.
But I guess my question would be is what and I'm assuming this news story was broken on MSNBC.
No, this was Substack. So it was written by
CNN,
those two individuals.
CNN was the one that.
Oh yes, you're asking. Yes, no.
And they're covering this extensively,
not at
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But they are covering the fact that Donald Trump is going to run for another campaign for presidency.
Yeah.
Constantly. And then they'll tell you what a threat to democracy that is. When a federal agency had agents on the ground that incited a riot, that gave them a narrative to turn you against your neighbor for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That is the headline.
Yeah.
But they're the right side because they're doing it for all the right reasons.
Yeah. And so what this article details is these congressional hearings that these, again, now former FBI agents testified in front of Congress, all that they knew about the FBI's involvement with January 6th and all that kind of stuff. And again, the Democrat elected representatives basically said, you're just disgruntled employees, you're not actually whistleblowers, basically poo-pooing everything they had to say, attacking the whistleblowers. But in one key part after the paywall, and this was put out on Twitter by Schellenberger, one of the authors of the article, after the paywall, it says this, quote, "Indeed, there may have been hundreds of undercover government agents and informants, both local and federal, in the January 6th crowd. According to one January 6th witness, there were 100 to 200 Secret Service agents alone at the Capitol before and during the breach of the police barriers." So again, Secret Service isn't even FBI. That's a separate thing. So there were 100 to 200 Secret Service agents there. How many FBI agents were there? How many local Washington, D.C. police were there? Again, undercover in the crowd. How many different agencies had undercover agents in the crowd agitating for it to go the direction it went? I'll tell you what they didn't do. They didn't stop the crowd from doing its quote-unquote illegal acts. Why not? It sounds like they were out in force. It sounds like, if nothing, they were maybe as numerous as the organic crowd of Trump supporters that were there. I don't know. Who knows? Somebody in the FBI does, and these whistleblowers are pointing in the direction as to who might know. And yet, the House Oversight Committee that these gentlemen testified in front of don't want to hear anything they have to say. They don't want to hear anything that goes against the narrative, which is This was an organic crowd of Trump supporters who are probably domestic terrorists, and anybody who's like them, flies a Trump flag, wears a Make America Great Again hat, anything else, or questions the legitimacy of elections, all that kind of stuff. Those are all domestic terrorists too. About 100 million out of 320 million Americans. That's the narrative. Don't question it. Even if you're an FBI informant, you're not allowed to question that. And that's the democracy that these Democrats are trying to say.
But the reason I brought up the MSNBC and the CNN thing is that it won't matter to that crowd. Like if they ever, right. God knows how this clip is going to get into their hands anyway, or their ears. But if they did hear this, they would think that we are Trump supporters. They would think that we are conspiracy theorists. They would think that we are unhinged. They would think, well, one of the two of us is definitely unhinged. But so they wouldn't be wrong 50%. But moreover to the fact that this is the problem now. This is going back to like the CEI and the media being the fourth branch of the government and so on and so forth. It's that like now they can create realities around it.
Yeah.
So these people are so steeped in the reality that January 6th was an insurrection that we had never seen, wouldn't even take a second to pause to think that maybe it was a black flag operation so that these people could have a carte blanche on turning your own neighbors into terrorists so that they can maintain power for so long. I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory.
And a pretext to throw you in a cage at some, ill-defined time in the future when they just decide to turn on you.
But there's been a clip going around this week that I shared with you and that you had seen on Twitter, recapping all the things that were said about the anti-vaxxed or the anti-vaxxers or the non-vaxxed, blaming them solely for all the deaths of COVID, not holding the people accountable that actually released the virus into the world that then killed it. No, we don't want to hold them accountable. They might have a government official name tag on or something like that. Or they might be attached to somebody that we're trying to do business with. We can't have that.
All hypothetically, because we want this episode to stay on YouTube. I really didn't know COVID was coming into this.
I'm not. It's not. It's not. I didn't even say. Did I say COVID?
Yeah, you did.
Oh my. I slipped the C word. But it's all these news anchors saying that you're the ones that continuing this. You're gonna kill the grandma, and then it's like, well, these guys are just stupid. And then like, oh, well, people that are unpinned. Are seeking medical attention. Oh, I'm sorry. Go out into the parking lot and die, Wheezy. I think was the Kimmel joke. Yeah. Like, okay, cool. So now that it's coming out that all these facts and figures, it's not even the harm that may or may not have been caused by some other form from her, but it's just the simple fact that they didn't know what they were espousing. It's come out and they've admitted that they didn't have the studies. They didn't have the data. They didn't have anything to back up the claims that they were making during said time. But you were just supposed to follow.
Right.
But you were a demon for not following. So to track it all the way back to this, if you don't just blindly follow the narrative, what does that make you? Makes you just as bad as the people
that are a domestic terrorist.
Exactly. It makes you just as bad as the people that infiltrated the White House or were led in by government operatives.
Exactly. And, the Epstein segment or the Epstein moment on this is, we've talked about COINTELPRO, which is, again, one of those conspiracy theories that was later a conspiracy fact. Ran from about 1956 to 1971, where the FBI illegally, again, according to their own papers that came out after the fact that established this as conspiracy fact, surveilled, infiltrated, and in an attempt to discredit American political organizations. And they did this, again, across a couple decades and did it in blatant violation of both local and federal law and the Constitution. And no heads rolled. The fucking FBI building in Washington, D.C. is still called the J. Edgar Hoover building, even though a majority of this happened under his direct leadership. he kept direct notes on people like Martin Luther King, which he tried to extort tried to blackmail to get him to step off of his personal crusade because of his infidelities with his wife. And, that is this organization. And I just want to put out a clarion call to the leftists today who think that the weaponization of the FBI against their political enemies and the Trumpers is this great thing, to kind of give you a little bit of a history lesson as to who COINTELPRO targeted in the past. And you might be surprised at some of the groups they went after. This is a non-exhaustive list from Wikipedia.
Black Panthers.
It targeted groups such as that were all deemed quote unquote subversive. Feminist organizations, the Communist Party of the United States, anti-Vietnam War organizers, activists of the civil rights and Black Power movements, including Martin Luther King, the Nation of Islam, and the Black Panther Party, environmentalists, animal rights organizations, the American Indian movement.
People that enjoy Bubblicious bubblegum.
Chicano and Mexican American groups like the Brown Berets and the United Farm Workers. Independence movements, including Puerto Rican independence groups such as the Young Lords and the Puerto Rican Socialist Party. And a variety of organizations that were part of the broader, quote, New Left. That's who they targeted in the past. Now they're targeting, again, who you think would be your political enemies, the Trumpers, anybody nominally on the right, et cetera, et cetera. You don't think at some point, if the right regains power, that this wouldn't be turned right back against you again in the future? It's already happened in the past.
Fuck it. You don't think you're going to start targeting you for not... You guys, you woke crowd can't even... You cannibalize each other all the time. There's no such thing as woke enough. Like, you were woke enough yesterday, and then you might have uttered like, yeah, my girlfriend had to shave her dick yesterday and she didn't use Manscaped. You said Manscaped. Expelliarmus! Like, gone. Out of the woke crowd. It's like,
it's Personscaped.
Yes.
Don't dead name it.
You fucking bigot.
So, like, listen, like this, to the uninformed, David and I, or quote unquote conspiracy theorists, can sound, I guess, a little bit out to left field, no pun intended. But again, it's not only the fact that we can just use general parameters like incentives and what are people going to do with given incentives in the future, but we have a long history of this happening. It's happened before, it's happening now, it will happen again. So why you would sit there and cheerlead this and not when a whistleblower comes forward and says, yes, we abused some of our power as the FBI in doing X, Y, or Z, and I know that's not convenient for your present narrative, but we did it. The fact that you wouldn't, regardless, again, what do we always hear? Party over principle, right? Are the Democrats placing their party over principle in adhering to this narrative, even when they have people from inside the FBI, people with stellar credentials by everything I've seen, saying that your narrative might be a little bit off or there might be some things that you didn't account for because maybe there was a little bit more federal involvement than you've been led to believe. If you just poo-poo that and just say, nope, I'm sticking with the story that I started with, you are walking down a very dark road. And the problem with that is you're not walking it alone. You're taking the rest of us with you. And we don't take that too kindly. So stop it.
Knock it off.
Stop it.
With all that succinctness being done, we probably have about 15 minutes left on this podcast, so it's plenty of time to go into the main topic.
Yeah, we're only on minute, like 45 of 30. So
yeah, of course.
We're doing good.
As we all know.
Yeah.
You round down.
Yeah.
Altman gives Skynet to the government. So Altman, in his infinite wisdom of creating a new intelligence on this earth, or being one of the founding members to do so, decided that it was going to give this new creation that has the power of worlds to create them and probably to destroy them in the all-knowing, benevolent hands of the government.
Yeah. This is a classic case of either being too smart for your own good or being so smart you're stupid. Like, or being book smart, but not really having a lot of street smarts.
You ever been to Scranton, Jan?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Scranton, Jan?
Because we're not going to say that Sam Altman is stupid in the general sense, right? Like low IQ or
Clearly
anything
not.
like that. Because again, he is the CEO of OpenAI, which is the company behind ChatGPT. They are on the, foredge of where AI currently is and pushing it forward.
Foreskin.
So I assume that Sam Altman and those working with him at OpenAI are pretty bright individuals, at least within their narrow sphere of AI and its functionality and all of that kind of stuff. However, Altman testified in front of the Senate earlier this week and said that, the senators expressed some concerns about how scary AI can be and that it might create problems X, Y, and Z in the future. And Altman wanted to put the senators' fears at ease and say, you know what, we're concerned about how AI can be abused too. And so I, Sam Altman, and my infinite wisdom have come up with a plan. What we should do is we should create a new federal agency, because we're just one federal agency away from utopia. All the other ones that currently exist, not cutting it. Need a new one. We should create a new federal agency that should be in control of regulating and licensing companies that develop and work on AI. Because, as everybody knows, the people that obtain elective office and the bureaucrats that are staffed in these government agencies, assuming he gets his way and a new one is formed, are the best and the brightest that humanity has to offer. They're the highest IQ'd, they're the most principled, they are the least greedy, the least corruptible. They are, to any extent that human beings can be angels, that's who politicians and bureaucrats are. That's the lived experience of all of us. Is that not right? That's all I've ever seen. The best and brightest are the ones in government. I know.
Weapons of angel sublimation.
And so I hope with that tongue in cheek, you can see exactly how, stupid is the word. Like, naive doesn't quite cut it. Naive is not strong enough to explain how someone could come to the conclusion that of all of the creations, of all of the institutions that humanity has created over time, that you would pick government to be the one that regulates something as powerful and potentially destructive as AI. Or liberating. AI could be very liberating in some senses.
Yeah.
And was government in the best position to decide how not to use it if it was going to be used for good cause?
But Dane, I know you cynical son of a bitch. You're like, oh, these guys are just going to use it to enslave us. Come on, Dane. It's not like these guys, right when they invented the nuclear bomb, by the way, had to break a lot of Geneva codes and pull a lot of war criminals out to be able to invent that so that we could have, supremacy of our weaponry against other countries. We were very responsible with it. We definitely didn't just drop it on the first two fucking targets that we could possibly find in this war. We didn't definitely get it and go, ooh, what does this do? Oh.
Hey, we've known about this potentially world-ending technology for 5 seconds. What should we do with it?
Put your fucking sunglasses on.
Drop it on a civilian population.
Let's just see what happens.
Sam.
So again, and for as devastating as a nuclear bomb is, as devastating as nuclear holocaust is, we don't know how devastating AI can be in the wrong hands. And like you said, how liberating it can be in the right hands. So with this huge, 360-degree spectrum of potentiality for AI, you want to give the thing that only fails and then says that the reason I failed is because I didn't have enough money. And each year it brings in more money than the last year and continues to fail, and then blame the people that gave it the money for it because we didn't give enough. You want to give them this asset.
Yeah. Or as we just talked about with the banking crisis that's been going on for the last couple of weeks, the same people that told you right before the collapse started happening, don't worry, everything's fine, we have this under control,
it's totally cool,
are going to be the same ones, they are the same ones, that when the collapse happens says, we didn't have enough control, we need more. to David's point about power and money and all of that kind of stuff. They can't even get banking right.
In fact, they bailed the people out that caused the crisis in the beginning and then left us to pay for the fucking bills that they created for us.
Now, don't get me wrong. Banking and finance are highly important things in terms of the global economy, in terms of allocating resources and things like that. But in terms of their importance, in terms of potential species extinction events, it pales in comparison to AI. And the same group that can't get that right, and in addition to the other they can't get education right. We keep throwing more money per student at the problem, and we keep having increasingly failing standards. They can't get resource allocation right. Constant rolling blackouts in places like California, and they can't get water out there.
But they mandated
in the right quantities and stuff like
vehicles.
That.
They don't have enough electricity, but you have to have an EV by 2023.
David and I could turn this into a 6-hour show just talking about government failures. Why you would want to put the potentially most dangerous or greatest thing humanity has created so far in their hands just boggles the mind at the level of stupidity that you could possibly have to think that would be a solution.
A social and civilizational, what would you call it? A civilization nuclear bomb. They can literally drop a nuclear bomb on our freedoms as we know it and have us under control like that.
Yeah.
Which is the name of the game for any government.
Did you not learn the last 2.5, 3 years?
Like,
Given an inch, how far will they go?
Right. Like, I mean, they had the C word, and they did everything to keep you in the dark and following their Pied Piper song. I'm not going to go down that road. Leads to a bad time. But I will say, Dane, do you know how smart AI was in the Terminator?
Pretty smart.
Terminator, it fired a nuclear barrage at, it said our enemies, but it was clearly Russia, knowing full well that Russia would fire back another barrage that's mutually assured destruction. So Skynet didn't even have to lift a finger. It just caused a proxy war.
For what we already had, yeah.
To just wipe us out completely.
Yeah.
Isn't it so funny that we're doing this right now when the tensions with Russia and the US have never, well, I mean, this is the highest it's been since the Cold War, easily.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah.
I mean, the timing, it's like, I know we always say it, there's no such thing as coincidence, only the illusion of coincidence, especially when you're dealing with government.
Mm-hmm.
Dane?
Yeah.
And are we all going to die?
And I mean, and that's just on the doomer side of the AI argument, which is again something that needs to be reckoned with, right? How destructive can AI be? But even on the positive side, it makes absolutely no sense. Altman told the senators that, yeah, AI will likely automate away some jobs, but it should be government's job to figure out how to stop that. But just think about that for a second, right? Imagine the government in like 1900 said, "Oh man, these automated carts, they call them automobiles. What's going to happen to all of the guys that are employed driving the horse carts? They're going to be out of a job if we let these things be mass produced and get into the hands of the common man. That would be terrible. We might very well be in 2023 still driving around horse and buggies if the government had that power to do." And now on just a simple example like that, now Altman thinks that government somehow is going to possess the infinite wisdom to decide what beneficial things AI should not be used for vain purposes of, well, we need to protect some jobs, right? This is the Andrew Yang thing when he ran in whatever, 2020 or 2016, whatever. It's like, oh my God, AI is going to take away truckers, and truckers are by far the number one. Like most people are in the trucking profession.
Just ask Comrade Trudeau about the trucking industry.
Oh, he would love automated trucks that he could just push a button and they all clear the Capitol Square. But anyway, so that was the thing. Like, oh, we got to protect jobs. Got to protect jobs. Now, listen, jobs are just as important as anything else. But as human beings have advanced in technology all throughout time, they've always found other things to do. So this idea that government should be able to say, nope, AI would be really helpful here and would really solve a bottleneck in terms of resource allocation. And it would really probably help with a lot of global hunger problems, because it's not the amount of food that's produced that's the problem. It's getting the food to the people that are hungry. And if AI can somehow figure out a way to solve that problem, but government's like, nope, we shouldn't do that because it's going to, stop this X, Y, or Z job. Like, do we really want, again, even if we set aside the whole doom scenario and just focus on the positive of it, is government even suited to make those calls?
Well, if there's
I posit to you, absolutely not.
If there's one thing the government is really good at doing, is creating more of itself.
That's for sure.
So what
it is a self-perpetuating parasite. AI
has that kind of effect on the government. Eventually, they're just going to create every fucking job they can possibly create and eventually consume us all. So we will eventually become what we hate, Dane.
Yeah.
We will eventually become part of the government.
Yeah.
How ironical. How the turntables...
I'm going to be like, in a Brave New World, the people that refuse to go along with that, they like moved out. I think it was like Arizona or something, but basically out in the desert, they had these like communities of people that just wanted to live the old way.
They have tarantula hawks out.
That would be us.
They have tarantula hawks out in Arizona. I'm not moving out there. They have tarantulas out in Arizona.
Rather than work for the Borg, that is the government. Nah, I think you would.
I don't know.
I think you can cuddle up to a tarantula hawk.
The tarantula hawk, not so much. I feel like, but the tarantula itself.
What is a tarantula hawk? Is it a hawk or is it a tarantula?
Oh, Bobby.
Or is it like a hawk that eats tarantulas?
You have a whole video. Okay. I apologize to our viewers that actually know about this. It's a gigantic fucking wasp. Like, no shit, like that big. It finds tarantulas.
Watch the video, audio only listeners, if you want to see David's sizing. Give him a descriptor. Like
twice the size of my dick. Come on, that was the easy stuff. That's the easiest.
I thought you were going to say half.
I know. But
self-deprecating. Yeah,
sometimes I lose confidence. Anyway, it's probably about like 4 to 5 inches long. And it does what it says. It hunts tarantulas. But when it finds a tarantula, the tarantula's like, hey, fuck off. And he does this little thing. Well, this guy gets in there and stings it. And that sting is so painful for a human that it's like immobilizing for a human, but we can still move. And it's like really high up there on the Richter scale, like with a bullet ant. But what it does to the tarantula is it renders it the Richter scale. But
we're now on to earthquakes, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. It's a
the mind of David. It is a place of wonders.
You don't know, it is not. Anyway, moving on, champ. So it renders the tarantula completely paralyzed. So the tarantula is alive, but it's just like, snapped its neck in a motorcycle accident. Can't move at all. Sorry if you've done that. Anyway, so after it's paralyzed, you know what this fucking insidious bastard does? It plants eggs in this alive, paralyzed tarantula. And I thought I could never feel bad for a spider. I was going to say,
as a spider hater, dude, how do you not love this?
Like, this dude plants eggs in it, and the eggs eat the insides of the goddamn tarantula and then pop out of its chest at the end to kill it.
David.
It's literally a horror movie, and it's on our planet.
Listen, David, as a speciesist, do you know what a speciesist is?
That I think that my species is better than every other species.
As a hardcore speciesist, my only question to you
arachnids.
Out of that entire explanation is, can the tarantula hawk implant its eggs inside humans?
It doesn't, no.
Then I don't care. None of that matters to me. Kill the tarantulas. I don't care. Do your thing, tarantula hawk. Do your worst. It's like those praying mantis videos that Joe Rogan always puts up where it's like eating something's face. It's like, well, it's not big enough to do that to me, so I don't care.
But what if humans are so lucky that we're this big?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things
we really played our cards right.
There's so many things that could jack us. A squirrel would fuck us up if we were probably like 3 feet shorter. Just 3 feet. We'd still outweigh the little bitch, but he'd be like so fast, he'd be in our jugular, and oh man. But just to think that like literal like horror science fiction shit is happening on our planet right now. And we're gonna see all of that nuked and cast asunder by AI meeting government. And how do you like that tie-in?
That's
what we do here. Weapons of destruction of
That's
means.
a scary future. So, Sam Altman, stop it.
Knock it off.
You stop it.
We should add that to that should be a segment. The knock it off segment.
Just get back to doing your shit
now
and quit playing politics and philosophy because you are clearly not cut out for any of it. So that's
So with all this hearty, heartwarming, heartedness,
I feel like the Tarantula Hawk story lightened it a little bit.
Lightened it a little bit.
I mean, not for the tarantulas that are in our audience. They probably didn't like that story.
Smashing the dislike button with one of their 8 fucking disgusting legs.
Fuzzy little toe.
Fucking mutants. Anyway.
We're sorry, tarantula
I know you
listeners.
might, if you've been having a bad day, at least you don't have eggs of something of your greatest enemy eating your innards about to pop out of your chest.
Listen,
like fucking alien.
It's kind of hard to have a worse day than that.
It's a pretty bad day. It reminds me of that Family Guy, Hiroshima, 1945. Oh, how could this day get any worse? Oh my God! And it's like a
monkey.
It's a bamboo that beats him the fuck up. But obviously it's the
yes.
Anyway,
Family Guy. Yeah.
Good times.
The glory days of Family Guy.
Good times. Anyway, Dane, with all that being said, where could they find this wonderful episode of Weapons of Meme Destruction?
They can get this bad boy at wmdpodcast.com/146. They can get the audio only on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can get the video on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. You can link up with us on our socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Just search.
Don't go to TikTok.
Just search at WMD Pod or Weapons of Meme Destruction. Again, you can find us pretty much. A Google search will bring up most of this.
Yes.
You can also get into that private members only Facebook page at $5 a month of support. Just go to the website, the Support Our Work tab, and figure out how to get in there. We'll send you an invite once we get that donation. Thank you in advance. And you can also, best way to stay in contact with us, always, go to wmdpodcast.com. On the homepage, click the box for sign up for the mailing list, so that way you can get on our email list, and that way we'll always have contact with you no matter which platform we get nuked from. Tribel and Float, also those platforms. So those are all the places to find us. We'll see you next week, hopefully not as slaves of AI on 147.
And we're going to get back to you on whether or not TikTok actually exists. And with all that being said, stay safe, guys. But more importantly, stay free.